Hey y'all, it's Hope here at Crafty Hope, and as before, I want to show y'all the processes for some of my mini assemblages for my hashtag mini assemblage 100 for the 100-day project. So the first one I'm showing you here is my number 53. This was a fairly popular one, and I did a image transfer. This is just a clipping of a photo from a magazine. And it happened to be on my floor, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to put it in here. So I'm using some matte gel medium and spreading it on the front of my assemblage on that magazine cutout. I'm putting it on fairly thick. It doesn't have to be super thick, but it needs to be covering the whole thing. Anything you want to transfer on to your, on this case, I'm using just a piece of fabric, but you could use another piece of paper or straight into your journal or anything like that. So once I have that on there fairly thickly, I'm going to apply it to my surface just like this. And I have this at regular speed so y'all could see the majority of this process. And then I'm just going to smooth it out. So I'm going to speed this up here in just a second. And I'm going to use, I think I grab like a key card or a credit card. First, I'll use my hands and then grab that key card and just smooth it out a little bit. Then I leave it, once I get it nice and smooth, I let that matte gel medium dry on that fabric. So I do that naturally for the most part. At the end of it, I did heat dry it just a little bit, but you can see there I wiped off any matte medium that might have gotten on the back of it because that will prevent the paper from peeling away some. So I am, just trying to get that nice and flat. And then I've come back with a little cup of water. I like to use warm water, but I don't think it really matters. And I'm peeling off the back of that paper. Now, don't rub too hard. If you rub too hard, you will possibly remove some of the image. I did that in a couple spots in here, but I will cover that up with some of the elements that I add to this little assemblage. So I'm letting you see this whole thing. I do often, after I peel this first layer of paper off of an image transfer, I will often dry it and do any second layers if there's any cloudiness or anything like that to make sure all the paper has been removed. This, for some reason, this magazine image did not have that cloudiness. So how lucky was I with that? But you can see there's some big white spots there on the right side of this photo. So I'm going to cover them up with some buttons. And I just happened to have, if you saw my last assemblage, number 52, that one, I had pulled those buttons out at first and laid them back down on my desk on that piece of fabric. And when I came to my desk on this day, that piece of magazine clipping was on the floor and those buttons were sitting there. I was like, you know what? We're gonna pull these things together. So I glued on there using that same matte gel. It was just a page number from a book that was also sitting on my desk, and I thought that would add some interest. So I glued that down. And then I've got my buttons here. And I think I find a little bit of brown thread. I think it's some embroidery floss that was already on a needle, and I'm going to sew these buttons on. So I did pre-poach that first hole just so I can see where it is, and I'll just make X's on the top. I think these are both 4-hole buttons, so I like with these to do like an X pattern on them. And I'm just sewing these on. I'm trying to remember if I do it a double X or not. Looks like I am. So like I said, I'm just sewing these buttons on. This was a fairly simple one. There's not a whole lot to this little assemblage. I did the image transfer, I glued the numbers down, and I'm going to add the buttons, and there's not going to be, oh no, I do add a few extra stitches with that brown embroidery floss. So I'm getting this second button on here, and I'm doing those. If I wanted to do just a single X in there when I did it, I could have glued those buttons first to make sure they're secure, but the double stitching it makes me feel a little bit better about it. So I sat and looked at it. I decided, as I was thinking about a third button, but I'm testing to see if that needle will even go through that button, and it won't. So I was like, you know what, I guess I don't need that button, but I need something else. So I sit and I look at it, and I decide to just put some more X's with that embroidery floss right on there for a little added interest. That left side of that picture has a lot of motion and image in it, so I knew I didn't need a whole lot more on here. but I like the texture that the embroidery floss stitches go. And I went ahead and just tore off that rest of that white side that the image transfer wasn't on. And here I am making another X, and I think I do one more after that, kind of to the right of the buttons toward the edge. Yep, right here. And I think that's going to be just about it for this one. Once I get it done, I will tie this one off on the back. And I'm going to give y'all a few close-up shots of this so you can get a better look at it. I will tell you that the 2 videos after this one, I do zoom in some of them so that you can see it better, but I have a hard time staying in screen with those. So I want to go ahead and apologize for that. And I hope you'll bear with me. I'm going to try to keep that in mind moving forward with the rest of these 100-day projects, the ones I share here on YouTube anyway. So here is this little assemblage, and like I said, I'm going to give you a look at these. For my mini assemblage number 54, the first thing I had was an acorn cap. Y'all, I don't think I've used anything natural in a couple days, and I just felt like I needed something natural in my assemblage. So I had another scrap of fabric, grabbed that. I've got this little piece of book page that I'm going to ink the edges and think I'm going to use it, but I end up not. I don't know if you can see it there. I've got a little bit of a scrap of lace that's just the right height as that little piece of fabric. And I thought, okay, well, I'll use that as well. So like I said, I inked up this little piece of whatever kind of book page that is, and I'm looking at it in my acorn cap, and it all felt too samey, like everything was brown, and I don't know. So I'm going to fiddle with this piece of embossed paper that I just used in one of my projects here recently. Oh, that was my card. I think I used that in. And I turned to, this was also one of my 100-day project, not my 100-day project, my Crafty Hope prompts, where I had to use triangles. But I had that piece of paper that had been watercolored, and I liked that pop of color on there. So I pulled it in, and then I wanted to alter my acorn cap just a little. So I've got some gold acrylic ink, and I'm just painting the inside of it. This is not something that stands out or is super, I don't know, it doesn't really pop as much as I thought it would, but it was a neat little accent. So there's not a whole lot to this one, but it's kind of just interesting. So I've got my Fabri-Tac, and I'm going to put it on the back of that piece of book page that's been watercolored and stick it on my fabric. And then I'll put more Fabri-Tac up my paper there and put that little piece of lace on it. And then I'm going to start fiddling with my acorn cap. So here's where I zoom in. And for the most part, I'm going to be in screen, but there are little bits of things that, yeah, I think when I zoom in, I lose track of my space. So I've got a little bit of brown, just some kind of sewing thread. I think it came in a box of a bunch of threads or something I had. And I cut it down, and I think I went ahead, no, I haven't put it on the needle yet, but I want to sew this button, y'all. I do love my buttons. I want to sew that cap to this little stack. So I've got a tiny little hand drill, and I'm drilling a hole, being as careful as I can with my acorn cap. Once I get the hole drilled, I lose a little bit of the gold, so I'll bring that back in to my acorn cap. And I realize that this hole is kind of big, so I'm going to need something in it as a stopper. So I've pulled in just a little black E-bead, which is like a large seed bead. And so I put my acorn cap onto my paper, and then the E-bead goes onto the thread, and then I will go around that E-bead and back through the acorn cap and the paper, and that will stabilize my little stack there. Now off camera here, I'm sorry, I'm just putting some X's just like I did in the previous little stack, but these are with this thread, like I said, some kind of sewing thread instead of embroidery floss. And they're a little bit larger than the other ones. And again, this is just for some texture here. You can see a little bit better here. So I apologize for being a little bit, see there, I was like, oh no, I'm off screen. So yeah, I'm sewing those right on to my paper. And then I start to look at this and I'm going to fiddle with a couple things here, I think. I get this one and the next one. I kept trying different things to bring it in. And you can see this whole time I was working this in one direction. Well, I'm going to end up deciding here in a minute that this assemblage looks better flipped the other way. So I am going to tape the back of this with a little bit of masking tape just to make sure that those threads are covered a little bit. So here's where I kind of flipped it. I'm looking at it both directions and deciding I like it better with those X's to the left side. But I felt like I needed a little something else. So I'm digging through this little thing of scraps thinking, okay, maybe I'll bring a button in, or maybe another bit of lace, or there's some whatever. And then I find this tiny little piece of fabric that's about the same size as that lace. And so I move it around on there, and the minute I turn it that way, I'm like, yep, that's what this needs. So I'll put the fabric tack on that bit of fabric, stick that down, and I think I end up grabbing my E6000 here because I want that acorn cap to be pointed up a little bit more and not like sad face down. So the E6000 helps me secure it a little bit. I'm using a toothpick to get it right where I want it so I don't get E6000 all over it, because while I love the E6000 as an adhesive, it gets super shiny, and I don't, unless I intentionally put shine on there, I don't want to see that shine. So once that's done, I decided I needed a little more gold on here and just wet a tiny bit of that gold acrylic paint with a wet paintbrush, and I'm doing a little bit of splatter and dry it, and this little piece is done. I'm going to show you some pictures of it as well, and we'll get to the next one. This last mini assemblage I'm going to show you is number 56. I decided that 55, y'all probably didn't need to see the process for or something. I don't remember what it was. If you do want to see these, the ones that I'm not sharing, you can head over to my Instagram. I'm at Crafty Hope over there, and you can see them all. But I have this piece of some kind of, oh, I can't remember what it was. It was something I bought in a lot, some ephemera, and then another piece of part of one of the papers I think I had watercolored, and glued those together because they were about the same size, stuck them together with an Oohoo glue stick, and now, y'all, I'm going to futz with this for a while, pulling in things, tearing things down, trying to figure out what it is I want to do. This is some kind of little piece of fabric that I'm going to stick there and move it around, and I decided that long strip of paper was just more than I really wanted to work with on this day. So yeah, I tore that down. And I found this piece of, it's tissue paper that I think I painted with some Payne's Gray acrylic ink for another project. And so I've got that little stack there. And I wanted this scrunched up a little bit darker and age to it. So this is some dried up instant coffee that I reconstituted with water, and I'm going to splatter it right onto my papers and dry it. Once it's dry, look, y'all, that's that piece of paper that I inked the other day and was like, well, maybe it'll work in here fine. So I've put it here. I'm trying to remember if I even keep it in. And yeah, I do. But that was that same piece from day 53, was it, that I inked and then decided that I didn't want it? Or maybe it was, I don't know. It was one of the ones we just watched. So I'm gluing these all together with my Oohoo glue stick. And, you know, I could have used the Fabri-Tac, but I guess the Oohoo was already still sitting there. And I'm moving these things around, and I finally am like, you know what, stick it down. So I have got that stuck down. And I think, yeah, was I getting to the end of my glue stick there maybe? I don't remember. And I've got this little jar of different pieces of fabric and thread. And I was like, oh, well, this pop of black might be nice. So I pull apart this embroidery floss. Y'all, I'm not going to use it. It ends up being too much. Like it's too dark. It's too black for what I've got going on here. That bit of Payne's gray was plenty dark enough. So as I sort through this, I find this strip of some kind of ribbon that I don't even know where it came from, and it's almost the exact same color as that other piece of paper that we started with. That was that real pale green. So I was like, you know what, that will be perfect. So, and y'all, that's why I keep little bits of these things on my desk, is sometimes they work out exactly, in the right way. So I will put my Fabri-Tac down and stick that bit of ribbon right on top of it. I think my only problem with this is some of that glue ends up showing here in the end. And then from there, I wasn't real sure what I was going to do, so I start cleaning off the little T-pin that I keep on my Fabri-Tac in my Fabri-Tac. And I ended up having to step away because I decided I wanted something kind of rusty or something. And I had found this piece of, I don't even know, some kind of wire in a parking lot, and was like, this could be really nice here. So I'm bending it and shaping it and moving it around, thinking it'll be really nice on top of that bit of ribbon. So I use my big Mama Jamma wire cutters to cut it down. And then I think, was I looking for my E6000? I think I was trying to figure out how I wanted to glue it down. So I believe I used my E6000 to get it stuck down. Yeah. So there's my E6000 and my trusty toothpick. Even though I'm using these little things of E6000, I still like the toothpick to help me be a little more exact with how I put it on little things like this. And I will stick that down, and I'll use a clothespin to hold it in place for a moment, just as like a clamp. That's my, my handy clamp. And I can pull out my drawer full of keys and think, oh, well, that could be really interesting on this. So I find this little key here, which I think is probably from Tim Holtz. It's not going to work its way into this. It ends up just being too much. I mean, it's neat, and I thought of a couple ideas the way I could use it at the end of the wire, thinking I could like turn that wire and hang it from it. And yeah, I'm going to futz with this for quite a bit. And again, you can see I zoomed in thinking, yeah, that'll be great. But yeah. So I've got this little bit of of embroidery floss that matches these greens. And I've decided, because it'll be too hard to glue down that bit of wire, that I will just put stitches on either side of this and tie it down and have the little bit of frayed embroidery floss poking up. So I trim it really close on either side of this, thinking, okay, that's super cute. And I ended up trimming down my ribbon just a little bit at the top because it kept curling in ways I didn't want. I'm going to trim it a little bit at the bottom so that the wire sticks out. And I futz with this key. There you see, I'm like, oh, maybe I could hang it. That could be interesting. Would that work? And I decided that was a little funky. And I'm like, oh, no, I don't want it. And I was like, it needs something, but I can't decide what. So I stepped away for a minute and I picked up that bit of wire that I had cut off and laid it across the bottom of it and was like, you know what? That would be perfect across this, just for that little bit of something. So I got some more of that embroidery floss, and I'm going to stitch it down too in the same way, going through, well, what am I doing? I'm pre-poking a hole. I don't know what I was doing. So I'm pre-poking holes, going through the front, leaving a tail, then going through the back. And then I'll tie just a little double knot and trim it. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. Again, this is not glued at all, but this is holding in place just fine. So trimming at those edges, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And y'all, that is pretty much, I think, all I do with this one. We're going to see. I'm trying to remember now. Day 56 was a few days ago for me. I've done a few more projects since then. So I'm trying to, keep up with what I did with these, because each one is just, even though I'm using a lot of the same techniques and things, I'm using buttons and wire and all kinds of stuff. It's a little different each time. So, and these are just things, like I said, that are hanging out on my desk and in my stash. All right, guys, I think that's all for this one. If you like this and want to see more, let me know. Give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button and come back later and see what else. I've got a few more of these I'm going to share. I'm going to just keep sharing them as long as you don't complain about it. So thank you for coming and spending this time with me. I really appreciate it. I will see y'all later.